Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you joining me for another week on the podcast. Before I get into today's episode, I've just got the same favors I ask you every single week. Number one, please make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. So, Apple, Spotify, Google, all the podcast platforms you'll be able to find us on. So by you subscribing, it helps us get out to more people. And then also on top of that, on Spotify, Apple, and anywhere that you can leave a review, jump on there and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on the social media. So at the Unstoppable Dad on Instagram and the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. By you doing that and those free actions for us, it helps me continue to grow this platform and hopefully get this information out to more people who can hopefully find some value out of everything that it is that I am doing here. Now, this week's topic, a couple of months ago, I listened to an audio book, which is called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And I've also been listening to a couple of podcasts recently that have Alex Hormozy on it. Now, if you are on the internet, if you're somebody who runs a business, if you've been in the fitness space for a while, if you're like I have, you're probably pretty familiar with who Alex Hormozy is. He's gone pretty viral, but on these podcasts, he refers back to the Simon Sinek book, so The Infinite Game. And the reason I wanted to talk about that as a concept is because it's been a little bit eye-opening for me over the last 12 months, bit over 12 months now, this transition period that I've been in where I've gone from one identity as a gym owner that I attach myself to continuing to still be a coach, but moving into the online space and doing a couple of different things and trying to really refine what I wanted out of life, really, what I wanted to do as a career and as a profession, and really thinking about goals and how to set up my long-term goals, short-term goals, things that I'm trying to work towards. And the whole concept of this infinite game that we play is that there are a lot of things that we undertake in life that are an infinite game. Things like our health, things like business. It's an infinite game because there's no known timeline. So you don't know where the finish point is. You don't know how long you're going to be playing it for. You don't know who the other players in the game are, or other factors in the game. So if it comes to your health, you don't know, but there's certain variables that you're not going to be able to crystal ball and know about. Like there's no real defined set of rules that go into this, and it's an ongoing game. And with a lot of that, let's take business, let's take health, let's take training. The big overarching goal is to be able to continue to play the game. And that's something that concept right there in that line, like to be able to continue to play the game, has driven a real shift in my mentality about certain things and the way I look at particular things. Because in the past, I would be so focused on short-term goals, and I've spoken about this a lot. It's along the same veins of taking a long-term mindset, but it's almost gamifying aspects of life and certain things of life where we don't necessarily have a finish line on the thing that we're working towards. And it's really changed my perspective on certain things. Take the change in profession or the change in the type of business that I want to run. My goal, there's always been a goal of getting to X amount of revenue, or when we had the gym, X amount of gym members. Now, those goals are still there. But if I look at it from the point of view of my business feeds my lifestyle and helps continue to put food on the table and deal with necessities and things like that. And one game leads into another. My relationships, my health, my family, they're all intertwined. But from the point of view of, if I'm relating it back to, say, business, the goal of the business is to stay in business. It is to be able to continue to do that. That is the goal of that particular game. That is the outcome, which is quite a different thing if we're thinking at it from a game point of view, because a lot of games that we are used to playing, they have a defined outcome. They have a defined time length that they are going towards. Like, one, you know what the finish line is that you're trying to get to, regardless of if you win or lose in the game. It's there, right? It's, you know when it's going to finish. You know the parameters that you're operating by. There's rules. There's known people that you're playing against. Like, all these things are clearly defined and set out. That's a finite game. Like, that's something that we know the parameters. And a lot of the times, if I look at my life, and I also look at like why people fail when they're trying to implement a change, a lot of the time they are trying to apply a finite set of rules to an infinite game. And if we take something like, let's take health, for example, and people are looking at what they're looking at, trying to change, make a change, and they're looking at trying to implement something to make them healthier in the moment. And that might be that their goal is weight loss. Rightly or wrongly, they might be looking to lose 5, 10, 15 kilos, whatever the case might be. And they go down this path of trying to get to a set outcome, only being focused on that particular set outcome. So this finite mindset, this short-term mindset. And then when they get there, they kind of, or if they don't get there, they fall in a heap, because they're not understanding that there's a bigger game at play here. There's a bigger set of circumstances that they need to look at, because the reason they're doing it is they're doing it for their health, and health within itself is a game that we play, that we try and maximize so that we can actually play the game for longer, which is that game of life, that game of trying to prolong and extend our life and our quality of life and push that end date out. But we don't know when the end date's going to be. We don't know when, like, and it's such a hard thing initially for me to get my head around. But now that I have gotten my head around it a little bit more, and I've started looking at elements of my life and elements of my clients' life where maybe we've been setting them up for failure by looking at a finite set of rules on a game that doesn't have an end date. It's like the relationship. It's like a relationship or a marriage. You don't win marriage. You don't get to be in a position, or you don't win a relationship. Like, there's no finish line for that. The goal of that particular quote unquote game is to be happy and stay married. Like, it's to prolong the relationship. Now, we can go down the rabbit hole of being happy while you did it, which is why I said be happy and continue to live a happy life with this person that you're in a relationship for. But there's no winning, there's no end goal. There's no end of that game. It continues on. Now, you can see winning as the continuation of it in a happy way, but there's no set parameters as to how long this particular thing is going to go on for. It's the same with parenthood. There's no end date to it. There's really no winning at parenthood. Well, I might take that back. Maybe there is, but the winning at parenthood is for me, maybe making self-sufficient children so that they are able to go out and be happy and be functional members of society and live the life that they want to. Maybe that's winning. But when that happens, you don't know. There's no end date to it. And your job as a parent will constantly evolve and constantly change as they grow, as they mature, as their needs change as well too. Like, it's this constant evolution. So there's no point in setting a finite set of rules, as in this has to happen by this stage. And if this doesn't happen, then we lose, and this and this and this. Like, that, you can't set those finite rules. on relationships. And I think in the same thing, I don't think you can set those finite rules on your health and your training and the things that you want to do for that. I think that if you can master the art of going into that particular anything you do for your overall health and well-being, whether it be training, whether it be the way you're eating or whatever the case might be, whatever change you're trying to implement with the long-term mindset of, okay, the goal of winning is to stay in this, to continue to be able to do this, to continue to be able to train. And now that doesn't mean that you can't have some shorter term goals within that, because I think that does help keep you on path and keep you motivated in the short term. But when you get there, if you've gone into it with, yes, I'm working towards this short term thing, but I understand that the overarching thing is for me to continue to be able to do that, then the dynamic when you finish that, or maybe if you don't quite get there, will completely shift and change. And it becomes much easier for you to continue to take action and do the things that you need to do in order to do it for the long term. And that was when I'm looking back on it, for me, it was particularly business, right? Because I think from the point of view of my training, I enjoyed training so much that I inherently knew this without really knowing it. Like I kept showing up to do it and I kept doing the work, even though I didn't deep down understand, like I didn't have this awareness. I just enjoyed it in the moment. And as a result, I kept showing up to do it. So that was easy for me. And for some people, it's not. And for the vast majority of people that I work with, it's not. And what I think, if you're in that particular mind state, digress a bit to talk more about what I've seen in clients and what I've seen in people that I work with. If you're somebody who it's not something that's second nature to you, understanding that this is like a forever thing, you are trying to do this in some way, shape, or form. So, like training the vehicle that you're doing it in right now is probably not going to be the vehicle you're going to continue to do it in your 80s or your 60s. But the goal of prioritizing movement for your own physical and mental health, that's the long-term goal. And to continue to be able to do that for as long as possible, because it's going to extend your life and your quality of life. That's the long-term game. That's the infinite game when it comes to movement and it comes to health. Now, if you go into anything with that mindset, you'll understand that you have time. And you'll understand that even though you don't hit those 3 sessions a week right now in this particular week, you then go and do it the next week. And then the next week. But then if you add those up over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, that cumulative effect of how much you've done is going to yield the results for that longer term game that you want to. It's going to keep you in the game and it's going to keep you to continue to do it. Now, at different stages as you go through, you may want to get a bigger squat. You may want to get a bigger deadlift. You may want to enhance this particular area of your training or your health and do a bit of a hard push, but it just means it makes it easy for you to transition out of that initial push back into that longer term by having that mindset of, hey, regardless of what the short term thing I'm working towards is, I understand and I know that the reason that I'm doing this is to try to continue to do this for as long as possible. And by doing that and making that shift, it makes it a lot easier to stay on path. It makes, more importantly, it makes it easier to get back to the path if you stray off it. And that is the one thing that I really, over the last probably only 6 months, have picked up when it comes to, as I said, for me, it's been more about like business and the dynamic of how I do business and what I'm trying to achieve with it. And even though I've been lucky enough to run a business for 12 years, it's only just recently that I've realized, hey, hang on, I actually like the things that it gives me are great. And yes, I have short-term goals around reaching X amount of dollars within the business or being able to earn this much, because they are important for now. They are important for providing. But the big overarching goal is for me to continue to be in business. So then that will dictate the actions, habits, and behaviors that I need to undertake on a daily basis in order to make sure that that goal is satisfied. Because that, for a lot of things in our life, is winning. Just our ability to continue to do it day in, day out for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's what I've got out of that concept and these things I've been listening to around it. The fact that understanding what type of a game that we are playing when it comes to certain things that we are looking to change can be a complete game changer. Because a lot of people that I've dealt with, and as I mentioned, a lot of times in my life, I've been applying a finite set of rules to a game that is infinite, that doesn't actually end. It ends when I die or when I stop. And that's the other thing. There's a saying which is a bit cliche: you only lose when you quit. And that's probably the case. That doesn't mean that what you've done previously is going to be sustainable now, but if you stop doing it, that because you're not still playing that game, you're not still playing that finite game, at that point, that's when you lose. But as long as you're in it, as long as you're doing the work, and as long as you're moving forward, you'll continue to win because you're still in it. So let me know what you think. Let me know what your takeaway is on the concept of like an infinite game. Do you understand the games that are never going to end within your life? And you may not call it a game. It just may be an area or an aspect of your life. I like to think I think that thinking of it as a game, for me personally, actually helps me objectively look at the areas that maybe I need to improve on, and then work on those actions to do that by looking at it as a game. Makes it a little bit more fun for me personally. For others, it might not. And for others, it might actually, you might feel like it makes it a bit too trivial for you. And that's fine. But I think understanding that concept of trying not to apply a finite set of rules to something that is going to continue on is really, really important. And it's something, even though in certain aspects of my life I inherently knew, once I've become more aware of it, it's been a lot easier to objectively look at what needs to be improved and make some changes from there. Because then you have that understanding that you do have time and you can make some changes, and I don't have to do everything right now. All right. So that's it. Thanks for listening for another week. I appreciate each and every one of your time. If you can go ahead, make sure you're subscribed, jump on and like the socials. So at The Unstoppable Dad on Instagram, The Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. I've also relaunched my premium program. So if you're in Australia and also New Zealand, you may see some of the paid ads running. If it is something that you feel you need to do, or you think that you would like to work with me one-on-one, you can just send a message to any of the social media pages, and I can start the process to see if it's going to be a good fit for you moving forward. But other than that, there are plenty of free resources that I put out constantly for you guys that can hopefully help if you don't have the financial means to potentially go down that path. Always here to help. Reach out if you need anything. Take care. Have a great week. See you next week. Goodbye.